Hey guys, so today we are going to get into why some mother daughter relationships are so toxic. This is a very sensitive topic for me. I seen a post on Threads, and this young lady had asked, like, those of you that have a healthy relationship with your mother, what does it look like? And I sat through because I don't know what that looks like, right? Like, I know how hard I try with my own babies, but I'm literally just winging it. My teenager still likes me, so I think I'm doing a pretty good job. But I have to be honest with you guys, like, when I was reading through those responses, I couldn't help but cry. And I found myself grieving and feeling bad for little me. At the same time, I was proud of myself for breaking the cycle because, like I said, my babies don't have the same story as me. And that's one thing that I work hard at. I know that a lot of the time when we try to give our kids what we never had, people only look at the material side of that, of like what we do or how much money we spend and what have you. But people don't really look at the internal work that you have to do to be a healthy parent, to create healthy children, to create a life that your children don't have to heal from. So today, you see, I apologize for the deep breaths because, like I said, this one is really touchy for me. But we're going to get through this together because I know that I am not alone. So, as we know, the relationship between a mother and daughter can be one of the most important and formative connections in our lives. But for some, like myself, it can also be incredibly painful, difficult, and even toxic. And if you've ever wondered why some mother-daughter bonds become unhealthy and what makes those relationships so challenging, that's what we're going to get into today. There isn't just one simple answer, however, but rather a combination of factors that play into it. The mother-daughter dynamic is unique because it's so deeply rooted in the family structure and often carries generational patterns, expectations, and emotional imprints. And when those dynamics go awry, they can create a toxic environment that affects both the mother and daughter in profound ways. One key factor is unresolved generational trauma. Many of us inherit emotional patterns from previous generations. A mother who wasn't shown love or affection by her own mother may struggle to give that same love to her daughter, even if she wants to. It's not that she doesn't care, it's that she might not have the tools or emotional awareness to break the cycle. This often leads to emotional distance, neglect, or in some cases manipulation because the cycle of trauma has not been healed. So, in doing my research on this topic, I understand as women, as well as women of color, that when it comes to us, there's a lot that we're working towards, conditions that we're working under. But I've gotten to a place in my life where excuses just don't work for me. They don't. And at some point, you have to look at your life and the person before yours and the person before theirs and say, okay, you know what? This doesn't work for me. I don't judge my mother, but I do have a lot of gripes with my mom because I have, even at this big age, I have spoken to my mother about how the things that she's done has affected me. And it really wasn't until I started to get aggressive, which is not my personality and not who I want to be, especially when talking to my parent. I've gotten aggressive with her about, hey, no, listen, you need to listen to how this affected me. It doesn't matter what it looked like to you. This is how it affected me. And now I'm raising 4 other human beings and I have to navigate this. You know what I mean? I also understand that for Gen X, therapy, specifically in communities of color, was looked down on. People thought that if you went to therapy, that you were crazy. And even my mother's response when I say, like, no, I'm serious. I really think that you should go to therapy. You have some things that you need to work out. My mother was a child that grew up in a home with domestic violence. She had an abusive father. She had a father that didn't give a damn about no emotions, and it came up a few years ago. I had asked her, like, around COVID, because I don't really, of course I know that she loves her mother, but I don't care for how she's dealt with my granny in the past. And I asked her, like, what is your problem with her? Why do you treat her the way you do? And she didn't even realize what she was doing. And she was like, what do you mean? And so I started breaking down, like, the things that I've seen from as early as I can remember. And she sat there for a second and she thought about it. And she said, you know what? She said, it's not fair, but she said, I always saw your granny as weak. And it was almost like a light bulb went off for me. She was like, I always saw your granny as weak. She was like, every single time your grandpa would abuse her, she was like, I was just hoping one day that she would fight back, and she never did. And I was like, wow, okay. And then we talked about, how even after my grandfather left, my granny obviously was left to pick up the pieces and take care of the kids, because my grandpa just went and created a whole nother family somewhere else. And he did the same thing to my other grandmother, which is my auntie's mom. So my auntie and my mom and uncles, they all have the same dad. And so my mom now saw this in two households. And so I realized that my mother has been living in survival mode and in this, like, state of almost hyper masculinity, truth be told, because all she knows is, I have to protect myself. Nobody's gonna do me like that. Nobody's gonna play in my face like that. My mother is feminine on the outside. Like, she dresses nice. She always smells good. She's always kept herself up. She keeps a clean house, things like that. But when it comes to how she deals with other human beings, she's a very aggressive and can be very mean and disrespectful. And then when you tell her about how she's reacting or acting, she gets defensive. But my mother happens to be one of those women where every emotion defaults to anger. And so I feel like when it came to having daughters, she did want daughters. We were wanted. But I don't think that she was ready to take on all of the emotional responsibility that was required of being a mother of daughters. Now, to keep it 100 with you, I honestly don't think that she was a woman that needed sons. I don't. She's amazing with my children, but she doesn't have to raise them. So that's a whole nother story. But even in my own experience with my mother, and you guys know my story, you guys know that I wasn't raised by her, but even in my own experience with her, she's very my way or the highway. She always has this thing where she'll tell you, like, I'm not that attached. And I've been cut off multiple times for not agreeing with her or not moving how she wants me to move. I have a video on here. It's in the queue. I have a video on here that talks about releasing your need to prove yourself to your parents, or releasing your need for your parents' approval, because I dealt with that. I have that kind of mom where if it wasn't her idea, it was invalid, or it was stupid, or it didn't make sense. And she still does that now. It's just that I've been aggressively setting boundaries with her to where she's just kind of figured out, like, okay, yeah, so she's not going to do all of that. But my last sentence before I got into that said, this often leads to emotional distance, neglect, or in some cases manipulation. And I've dealt with all of those. Like I said, I was not raised by her. I would come back home for like the summers or things like that, and I would be at my auntie's house. She never seemed to have time for me. And I can remember one time where I actually said something to her about it, and I was 13 years old, and I got cussed out for calling her out on how her behavior was affecting me. And I still didn't see her. So the neglect was definitely there. The not feeling good enough because I didn't feel important enough to her was there. You know, I could go for days with the manipulation, the gaslighting, you know, all of that good stuff. So it's been very difficult because as bad as I wanted to have little girls, it was something that I was terrified about because I did not want them to have the same story as me. I didn't want my children to feel like they couldn't come to me. I want my babies to come to me, and this is for all 4 of my children, but this is with the emphasis on my daughters, especially due to, you know, what we're talking about today. But I wanted my babies to always know that no matter what, they could come to me. I never wanted my kids to be afraid of me. I didn't want my kids to feel like I really could use my mom's guidance right now, but she's going to judge me and read me for filth. I didn't want that. I wanted my babies to know that no matter what was going on in their lives, whether I agreed or disagreed, that I'm here. One of the things that I tell my children is that if at any point in your life I am hurtful to you, and you come and you tell me that, and I disregard your feelings, let me go. Because a mother's love, or a parent's love, period, is supposed to be unconditional. So if I'm putting conditions on how I love you, I don't deserve to be around you. I don't care what I've done for you in your lifetime. And I mean that. I want to break that cycle. I want my grandkids to be able to, like, y'all, I'm not in a rush for my kids to get any older right now, but I am excited for the future. I am excited that one day, you know, I'll be somebody's grandmother. And I cannot wait to be the grandma that, like, you know, takes my grandkids everywhere and spoils the grandbabies. And I'm there with my daughters every step of their pregnancies. And I'm there with my daughter-in-laws. Like, I really have a thing with that. And we're going to get into in another episode, we're going to get into, like, you know, dealing with jealous family members, jealous in-laws, toxic in-laws, because, baby, I done been there too. But for today, we'll stick to this topic. Another issue that can lead to a toxic relationship is unrealistic expectations. In many families, mothers have high hopes for their daughters, expecting them to be successful, accomplished, or to live out certain dreams. I went through this as well. Unfortunately, when those expectations aren't met, the daughter can feel constantly criticized or unloved for not measuring up. The pressure to be perfect or to live up to mom's image can create feelings of inadequacy and resentment. And on the flip side, the mother may feel frustrated or disappointed when her daughter does not meet those standards. One second, y'all. Lost my place in my notes. Give me just a second. Leading to criticism, control, or guilt tripping. What can happen here is that the daughter starts to feel like her worth is only tied to her achievements. And the emotional connection to her mother becomes about fulfilling her mother's expectations rather than truly being herself. Let's get into it. Okay, so I feel, for me, this feels so deep because, like I keep saying, I didn't grow up with her. So there was a huge part of me that was trying to prove myself because I felt like if I was everything that she wanted me to be, I apologize. Y'all know I have a dog. If I was everything that she wanted me to be, then she would come around more. I have other videos on here, especially like the relationship content, where I tell you guys, like, you know, we talk about how I had learned that my need to prove myself to her had manifested into my relationships with other people, mainly, you know, relationships with men. I can remember when I was a little girl, I remember her telling me, like, oh, you should be a lawyer. And those of you all that are eldest daughters and have eldest daughter syndrome like I did, you guys know, like, I feel like that's something that they tell all of us, like, oh, you should be a lawyer. Yeah, no. I'm such a creative. I would probably drop dead if I had to go to law school. I'm not gonna lie. So that was one thing. But I do remember, like, having this thought in my mind of, like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to go to law school because she wants me to be a lawyer. That was one thing. Another thing was, I did want to go to an HBCU, but when I graduated high school, all I wanted to do was go straight into beauty school. I knew that I didn't want to go to a university yet. I was very well aware of that. Well, that goes back into the manipulation, right? So because I was graduating high school and I was getting ready to move back with her, she was like, no, you're going to college. And I was like, but I don't want to go to college. I don't even know what I want to go for. And she was like, well, you can go to cosmetology school after, but you're going to college first. And my mother had a rule that if you lived with her, you were going to school. And if you had a job, you was going to pay rent. And so as someone that had experienced teenage homelessness before, I just did what she said. And I went to school. And let me tell you guys that I spent 3 years going to school for nothing. And I still didn't feel like it was worth anything. Mind you guys, I'm back in school now as a grown ass woman. But now I know what I want to do with myself. I didn't know then. So I was strictly doing what she wanted me to do. Another thing that I had to come to terms with and understand, I do believe that she was trying to help based off of her own life experiences. But I think that a lot of the turmoil in our relationship has come in because when you go against the grain with her, she takes it as betrayal. If you're not receptive to her suggestion or her idea, it is betrayal. And then that's when you get the aggressive or the condescending or the abusive comments. And I've dealt with that before. I can remember one of my kids had a birthday party. And every year we were spending $200-$300 on a cake. And I remember her telling me, this particular year, I was like, okay, I'm not doing a cake because we spent all this money. The cake doesn't get eaten. And now we're cutting it up in these big old pieces and freezing them. And my family, my family that I created, we don't really eat cake like that. We're the kind of people that'll buy a cupcake or two from the grocery store and be content with that every couple of months. So I remember she called me and she was like, okay, what are you guys doing about desserts for the party? So I tell her oh, we're just going to do cupcakes, cakes, and cake pops. And she was like, y'all not doing a cake? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, why not? And I explained to her and I said, well, it always goes to waste and it always ends up in your freezer. Well, I want a cake. I said, okay, well, you can buy a cake for you to have at home, but I don't want a cake. Whatever. So she drops the subject. Well, she calls me back a day later and she has this friend, had a friend that was a millionaire. So the lady just throw money around on just whatever. So she calls me back and she's like, well, Tina wants a cake. So Tina says she's going to buy a cake for his birthday, whether you like it or not. And I was like, yeah, no. I said, if you guys buy this cake, I'm telling you now, I'm going to knock it over. And she got so angry. Why would you do that? And I said, because I'm telling you that for my son's birthday party, I don't want a cake. We have enough stuff. Oh, so my opinion doesn't matter. I just spend the money. The funny thing is every single time, because she is my event decorator and my event planner for my children's birthday parties. That is her thing. That's what she likes to do. However, I never expect my mom to purchase the supplies out of her own pocket. Of course not. So I will give her my business debit or credit card and I will give her my budget and I will say, this is what I want. I don't need extras. This is my budget. Okay. Now, as a grandmother, of course, you guys know she's going to go do what she wants to do, and that's fine. But you are spending money that you are choosing to spend. I'm not asking you to spend anything. I'm not asking you to go over the budget. I'm not saying, hey, mommy, if my budget is $300, and the stuff is $500, can you just cover the balance? I'm not even that kind of person. So it's she will do things, and then when those things are not received or she doesn't get the claps or praise for them, then it's a problem. Now it's smoke. And she's been doing this to me forever. But now that I've been doing the inner child work, a lot of that has changed because I'm not tied to you. And with all due respect, and this is something that my dad said to me one day, and it just changed my whole perspective on everything. But he said, you have to start looking at people. He said, whether it's me, whether it's your mom, whoever it is in your life that's older than you. He said, start looking at where they were when they were your age. Because mind you guys, it's one thing to say, hey, so when I was 35, I did this, and this with my money, and I'm looking back at it now, and I just don't think that was the greatest idea. Like, you can do what you want to do, but I'm just telling you that, like, that's something that I look back on and I regret. You know, that's one thing. That makes total sense. But she doesn't do that. She doesn't ask clarifying questions. It's just if it doesn't make sense to her, she's going to try to make you feel like you are a peon. Pretty much. So that last section really spoke to me because that is what I've been going through literally for like the past 32 years. You know, like it wasn't until last year that I really, really started, or not even 32, I would say 33 years, because now it's 2025 and I'll be 35 this year. But now I'm at a place where it's like, oh, okay, so my identity has been tied to her idea of me or what I wanted, what she wanted me to be. My identity has been tied to if I was this, she would love me more. She'd be around more. And I've talked about that in other situations about having to learn that I could not love people into loving me. If you were going to do that, I wouldn't have to do anything to earn it. I just have to be myself. Then there's the issue of emotional enmeshment, which is another key reason for toxic dynamics. And I cannot wait till we get to the other episode when we start talking about enmeshed families and how that if you're in a relationship or have been in one, why you are dealing with the case of toxic in-laws. But we'll get to that one in another one because this is enough to unpack on its own. In an enmeshed relationship, the boundaries between mother and daughter can become blurred. The mother might rely too heavily on her daughter for emotional support, validation, or even a sense of identity. I've been through this, and I myself have a friend whose mother pretty much, like, you know how we all have that joke of like we're parenting our parents, but like her mother acted like she could not move without her. Like, I'll never forget one time she came to get her hair done, and she really had an attitude because she had to drive herself to her hair appointment and was like, oh, I should have just had Ashley take me. Y'all, Ashley had literally just got off of work from pulling 2 doubles. And her mother did not care. She was just like, nope, you're going to take me. And then when Ashley finally was like, no, she felt away. This can put an overwhelming amount of pressure on the daughter, who may feel like her role is to take care of her mother's emotional needs instead of having a healthy individual identity. For example, a mother who shares too much of her own emotional struggles or uses her daughter as a confidant can place an unhealthy emotional load on the child. This often happens when the mother sees her daughter as an extension of herself rather than an individual with her own needs and autonomy. I've dealt with this myself. I call myself my mother's emotional support child. And it wasn't until, I want to say, maybe last year that I noticed. So my mother is married. She's on her 4th marriage now. And I just thought it just took a minute to kind of for the light bulb to go off for me, right? So before she got married, her and I would literally talk on the phone every day for like hours, right? She'd tell me about work. She'd complain about people at work. She'd complain about whatever else. I'd be sitting there listening to her cuss people out in traffic, whatever the case is, right? I noticed that when she got married and her and him moved in together, that those calls literally just virtually stopped. Like, not tapered off, nothing. They just stopped. And I didn't feel away, you know. But I have noticed, like, I am one of the people that, like, being in a relationship does not change how I associate with the people around me. I don't stop being a friend. I don't stop, you know, making time for my family members or anything like that. The only thing... Oops, sorry, I'm trying to reach for something. The only thing that really changes is just that there's another person added into my life. You know what I mean? And so it would get to the point, y'all, where if I did not call her, I wouldn't talk to her. And I remember telling my children's father, like, hey, I just realized something. Because he was like, is your mom cool? Like, how's everything going? You know? And I was like, I'm assuming it's fine. She hasn't called me. And he was like, yeah, that's what made me ask. He was like, because y'all be on the phone like every day. And then he thought about it. And he was like, oh, she got bro over there. And I'm like, yeah, so she don't need me no more. And it's funny because he asked me, he said, well, how do you feel about that? And I said, to be quite honest with you, I feel used. I said, I'm not bothered in the sense of like, oh, she doesn't call me anymore, because the calls were getting exhausting. You know, like, you're making me emotionally responsible for you, right? You're dumping on me. You're dumping your entire day on me. If I don't answer right away, I'm getting multiple phone calls, things like that, right? And so I told him, I said, I kind of feel used because now that he's there, I'm not expecting her to talk to me on the phone for hours, you know, but it's just like, so I just don't exist at all. Okay. And then what happened was there was a situation. So he, the job that he works, it causes him to travel. And so he had to travel to the other side of the country. We live in California. He's on the other side of the country. And once that happened, the phone calls started up again. And so she called me to let me know that he had left for work and how she was kind of feeling about the situation. But then I'm talking about, like, y'all, like every single day, all of a sudden my phone started ringing. But the difference this time around was I stopped picking up. I picked up when I felt like it, because I know that you're using me for emotional support, right? So even now, he's somewhere else right now. And she was calling me to tell me the other day, like, you know, where they're, because he's in the military. So they were calling to tell her, or she was calling to tell me, where he was going to be at for work next. And she is not, the job that she works, she doesn't want to have to, like, leave her job. So she's not with all of the moving around and all of that. So she be on that, like, I'll see you when you get back type situation. And that works for them. But I just noticed that now it's like, oh, let me start calling her again. Nope. Because you only call me to complain about people, whether it's my sister or him or work or whatever. But it's like, one of the things I noticed too, and I told my children's father, I said, you know, I noticed too that when I speak to her, or when she calls me to dump, she'll call me, she'll dump, and then she gets off the phone. If I even attempt to tell her anything that's going on with me, she has to get off the phone. And so that's when I realized, like, oh, okay. So I have just been put here for I guess, as for emotional support. This one is going to get really deep, and we have talked about this a few times on my channel. But another factor that often contributes to these types of toxic relationships is narcissistic parenting. That's how this was supposed to be loud for a reason. In some cases, mothers can display narcissistic traits where the primary focus is their own needs, desires, and image, often at the expense of their daughter's well-being. In these situations, the mother may manipulate, belittle, or control her daughter, seeing her not as an individual, but a tool to bolster her own ego. A narcissistic mother might dismiss her daughter's feelings, demand excessive attention, and create an environment where the daughter's needs are always secondary. Over time, this can lead to the daughter feeling invisible, unimportant, and constantly striving for validation that she will never get. This creates deep emotional wounds, leaving the daughter feeling inadequate and unworthy. Baby, let me tell you. I literally have a video on this channel called Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers, Are Y'all Alright? For that very reason. Y'all, I have been gaslit. I have been told, oh, well, you know, these people said that she was going to do this to me when I hadn't done anything to her. She lived with me for a period of time, and that entire time that she lived with me, I was verbally abused. I was criticized. Just everything under the sun. I asked her not to smoke in my house. I don't like cigarettes. I come home from work one day to grab lunch, and she's in the bathroom. Big cigarettes going up. Every time she felt a way about something I was doing, I got cussed out. Like it was almost like, you forgot that I'm an adult and you're in my home. And so it's like whatever you're feeling because you have to live with me is making you think that it's okay to degrade me because you want to bring me down to your level, or however you're feeling about yourself in the moment. Those of you guys that know that I own a business. I've owned a few businesses. And I would talk to her. I would get excited about my next business venture, right? And I would talk to her about it. And she wasn't interested whatsoever. I remember during COVID, I had opened up a shoe store. It was an online shoe store. It was something that I always wanted to do. And I was very excited because a really close friend of mine who owns a boutique had gone to like one of those expos where you can meet up with different like vendors and different companies. And she had met up with a couple of the vendors, and she didn't want to do shoes. So she was like, I heard you wanted to do shoes. And she sent me some contacts to get me started. Y'all, I was so excited. So I called my mom and told my mom what's going on. And y'all, in the middle of my excitement, she was like, oh, so I guess I'm going to have to hear about this for the next few weeks, huh? And I was like, nope, actually you don't. But you know what's funny is once it started to kick up, once my business started expanding and I had to get more like storage space to store my inventory and things like that, then it was cool to promote my business. And it's been like that my entire life. Like, until everyone else supports me, the support is not there. Like, for instance, I've been doing hair since I was a child. When I the first few, I want to say when I first really started taking it serious as far as a career goes, I wasn't getting promoted like that. But I would be forced to do her hair and my sister's hair every time they needed their hair done. And it's funny because on my other channel, people always talk about or compliment me on being able to braid with nails when they don't understand. I used to try to use that as a way to get out of doing their hair. And she would make me do it anyway. And so I definitely I can't even begin to tell y'all, this goes into all of the inner child work that I've been doing and understanding why I do the things that I do, or why I was doing, or how I was operating, or you don't even realize half the time what you're going through. And that's why when you go through these revelations and you have them, they're so huge, right? So that last line, my second to last line. Over time, this can lead to the daughter feeling invisible, unimportant, or constantly striving for validation that she'll never get. That was me. I learned to be okay with being invisible. My mother would praise everybody around me except for me, and none of them were doing any of the things that I was doing. None of them were reaching any of the levels of success I was reaching. I was expected to be a straight A student. My sister could bring home a C, and my mom was excited. My mother, she still will say little condescending things. I just have learned to kind of let them go, but I love cooking. That's why I put little cooking videos on this channel. I don't care if anybody watches them. I just love to cook. And ever since I created my own little family, I love to cook for my family. But she used to always tell me how I couldn't cook, or she'd be like, if you want a husband one day, or you need to do this and you need to do that. Every single thing I do, it gets criticized. Every single thing. Y'all, my favorite gadget in my kitchen is my Instant Pot. Okay? I can't do that. I can't use that. I just do it the old school way. It's not about new school or old school. I just love my Instant Pot. I love gadgets. I happen to be one of those people. But she criticizes every single thing that she doesn't understand or doesn't agree with. So I've just learned from my own mental protection, I just don't tell her anything anymore. I keep her up to date on the things that are going on as far as the kids go. Oh, hey, the kids got good grades. Or, oh, hey, Stinky got in the car yesterday and told me that, he checked his grades and he has a 4.0. And she happened to be on the phone. But other than that, I kind of keep my life to myself. I don't know how else to put that, because I noticed that once I became the main character in my own life, her and everybody else started treating me differently. And it was in a place of resentment. And I've talked about that in other videos, where when people can no longer mistreat you, obviously their need for you changes. And some people will drop you like a bad habit. And I have this thing where I always tell people, I really wish that she would just admit that she doesn't like me, because it would just make things easier for the both of us. Because her actions tell on her every time, but it is what it is. So, the last point that I'm going to touch on today is that, touch on when we're talking about this, right, is the reality of poor communication and the lack of emotional support. And this one, of course, like all of them, I'm going to keep saying, oh, this is big for me. And I apologize if that comes off as repetitive, but it's true. It's big for me just because I felt all of these things. And, the whole point of my channel is really just to make you guys feel seen. Or sometimes you guys will be like myself, where you realize like, oh, I'm not fucking crazy. This is what really has happened, right? Like, oh no, this really happened to me. Okay. Because sometimes even when I make these like videos, I feel like that with myself. Like, oh shit, that really happened to me. Sometimes these toxic relationships aren't caused by overt manipulation or control, but by simply not having the emotional tools to communicate effectively. So maybe the mother is distant or emotionally unavailable, or the daughter feels like she can't trust her mother with her feelings. This also leads to a lack of connection and understanding between them, and over time, emotional distance can become resentment. When the relationship lacks emotional nurturing or open communication, it's very easy for misunderstandings and hurt feelings to build up, leading to more toxic patterns. When the daughter feels unheard or unsupported, she may start to pull away or lash out, creating even more friction. On the flip side, a mother who feels like she's being rejected or criticized may respond with defensiveness or criticism on her own. I'm very much aware that my mother is emotionally unavailable. I can remember as a child, I would come to her and I'd be like, you know what, mommy, I'm not feeling okay. What do you mean? Like, mentally, I'm not okay. Or I remember when I had my first son and I told her that I thought I was going through postpartum, and she told me that Black women don't get postpartum and to get over it. We do what we got to do. I gave her grace in those scenarios because she didn't come from a family that was emotionally supportive. So I can't expect her to be something that she's not. But I think that Gen X's gripe with millennials and the generations under us is that we no longer take that as an excuse. Okay, you may not have been able to go and have access to therapy financially when I was younger, but in order for you to be better now, you have access now. And we know most of the older folks got like the good insurance. You are who you are because you want to be there. She's telling me that, like, I know I got problems, but I ain't finna sit in nobody's chair and talk about them. So you just rather continue to hurt the people around you because it's not important enough to you. That's how I take it. So, if for you feel like this is something that you want to give a go at to try to heal, I will give you some actionable steps. I will tell you, for me, myself personally, I don't care to expend that energy. I'm gonna just be honest with you. The way that I am rectifying these things for myself is taking my ass to therapy when I need to, acknowledging when there are things that transpire that I don't like, unapologetically setting boundaries, and breaking the cycle when it comes to my own babies. That is where I am honoring little me. I will tell you that if your mother refuses to be accountable and self-aware, please do not waste your time. Please do not go and break your own heart. Understand that they are the problem, you are not. And then go do what you need to do to heal and work on you. So, the first step in healing any type of toxic relationship is to establish clear and healthy boundaries. This means be clear about what you will and will not tolerate emotionally and physically from your mother. Boundaries help protect your mental and emotional well-being. This is something that I've done. If I tell you I don't like how you talk to me a certain way, and you feel like because I'm your child, you can talk to me like that, you won't have access to talk to me. She likes to criticize my parenting. You didn't raise me. You don't get to do that. So when it starts, I will address it immediately. And if she continues, I get off the phone. I don't stay on the phone. I don't allow myself to be verbally abused. I don't allow the emotional abuse. I don't allow the aggression. If we are not having a positive conversation, I am getting my ass off the phone. Everybody laughs, but I have this thing where I'll be like, yeah, so I need to go and walk my bird. I'll call you later. Or there's times where she get the snipping on me and I'd be like, oh, so somebody's in the mood. Yeah, talk to you later. I'm not doing it. I don't deserve it. I don't put my shit on other people.
That's a kick.
So I'm not going to allow it in my own life. And then once again, especially if you're parents yourself, you can't be the best you if you are being emotionally shit on by somebody else, or if you are dealing with this internal turmoil as at the hands of somebody else. No, you don't. No. Work on communication. If possible, try to open up a dialogue with your mother. This might be difficult, especially if the relationship has been toxic for a long time, but expressing your feelings honestly and respectfully can help create understanding. I've done this. I will say sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I do understand that my mother's defensiveness, she won't admit to it, but I do believe that deep down inside, she doesn't feel like she did the best job that she could do. And I'm sure that there's some resentment and some guilt that she holds for that, because there's times where I'll bring things up to her and I'll say, hey, so this happened when I was a kid and I'm noticing that you're doing it now with my kids and it's triggering for me and I don't like it. And sometimes, depending on the conversation or how she's feeling, she'll default to, you don't have to tell me I was a bad mother. You're always telling me that you think I like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you that, hey, this happened to me. It was hurtful for me. And I'm noticing that you're doing it now. So I'm calling it out so that you don't do it to them. Seek therapy. Therapy can be incredibly beneficial for navigating toxic family dynamics. A therapist can help you process your emotions, heal from any wounds, and develop healthier ways of interacting with your mother. When I went to therapy for me. Like I said, she doesn't feel like she needs to. So for me personally, that's not something that I'm willing to do or try, because I'm not finna pay for no session and we supposed to be working things out and then you have a reason why you can't show up. Because like I said, my entire life she's always been too busy. I'm too busy. I don't have time for that. So I don't even bother, me personally. Lastly, give yourself permission to let go. This is the stage that I'm in right now, and it has been the best thing for me. Sometimes you have to accept that you may never get the relationship you want from your mother. This does not mean that you stop loving her, but it does mean that you stop hoping things will change in the way that you expect. Letting go of unrealistic expectations will help you create space for healing. This is where I am. And for me personally, this is the best place that I could be. I understand that this is who you are. I understand that you are unwilling to change. I understand that you are perfectly fine with where you are in your life and the place that you're in and your relationship with me. Hey, I'm not going to hold on to that for the rest of my life. I have my own 2 daughters that I am raising, and I don't want them to grow up feeling how I have felt. So for me, letting go, loving from a distance was the best thing that I could do for myself, little me, my younger child, my mental health, all of that good stuff. At the end of the day, the relationship that you have with your mother can be unique and complex. Not all mother-daughter relationships are toxic, and many can be healed with time and effort. But if you are in a situation where this is affecting your mental and emotional health, always choose you first. Whether that means setting boundaries, seeking therapy, or giving yourself grace to heal, remember, you deserve to feel loved, supported, and respected in your family relationships, and you have the power to make choices that protect your peace. As always, I love y'all. I appreciate you all. I hope this message finds you well. I hope this sold into you however it needed to. If you found this conversation helpful, I would so appreciate it if you would share it with someone who might need to hear it. And I would also appreciate if you would like, share, and subscribe. Please feel free to get in the comments. If you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to talk about, I'm here for that. You can also find me on Instagram under the same handle. If you just need somebody to talk to, I'm here for that too. So I will see y'all in the next video. I appreciate you all. Bye.